Thank you very much for being with us. We will discuss today about art therapy and especially how Canada and Quebec is answering the question about art and mental health. And when it comes to museum, with me, I have the pleasure to have Sophie Lessard-Latendresse, who is the head of the art and wellness development at the National Museum of Fine Arts of Quebec, and Stéphane Legari, Program Officer of Therapy, Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. Thank you both for being here on this International World Art Day. I will begin with a very, I would say, simple question. If you could introduce yourself better than what I just did, explaining us what type of responsibility do you have in the museums regarding art and health, and also how your work is related to therapy through art. Maybe let's be gentlemen and ask Sophie first.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us today. It's really a pleasure. So my name is Sophie. I'm an art historian, art therapist, and I work at the National Museum of Fine Arts of Quebec. So I'm really in charge of the art and wellness development field there. So since I think it's 2018, so the National Museum of Fine Arts of Quebec has really placed the human at the very heart of its objectives. So really highlighting diversity, accessibility, and inclusion through a program called The Art of Being Human. So for me, art is therapy, and my really humble goal in life is for everyone to taste the medicine of art, whether it is by coming to the museums, art galleries, or if they can't make it to us, we will go to them to where they are. So we often talk about the power of art as a mean of expression, but I really feel that viewing art is for me another way to have like a cathartic experience and what I like to call like an awe experience as well. So I really view art as an extension of oneself, and it can be terribly helpful also for our mental and physical health also. So my work is really related to therapy in the sense that I am developing art and wellness programs to help people releasing stress and really helping boost their self-esteem, having also shared experiences, and really make them feel that they belong to the museum setting and that their voice is heard, basically. So we do not need to have a doctorate in art history to appreciate a work of art and be moved by it. For me, it's just like having senses and like emotions, and that's it. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sophie. We can feel, the
My
heart.
passion. Yeah.
Yes, this is really a question of passion for you. Stefan, please.
I'm not going to be able to improve on what Sophie has said. I identify with so many of her beliefs and the way that she describes how art is therapeutic. I will just share a little bit about what our program looks like here. So we have an art therapy program as part of a broader wellness program at the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. And the way that that looks sort of day to day is we have groups, typically closed groups, where we're working in collaboration either with our partners in a clinical milieu or our partners in a community milieu. And we will build different kinds of programs that respond to the needs, whether that's along the lines of a diagnosis or along the more social oriented needs. So let's say that people are living specifically with social isolation, which is, I think, one of the great scourges of our time. And all of us, hopefully exiting the pandemic, can identify with that urgency to reconnect. The way that art animates these different therapeutic groups is in two steps. One, we use the bounty of the museum's collection as a source of enrichment, as a source of awe, as a source of wonder, and a way to project, so that we take parts of ourselves and project them onto the artworks. And the artworks don't mind, which is the great thing about the fine arts. So they're more than happy for us to have these different kinds of dialogues that don't exclude art history, but where art history tends to play a secondary role to people's lived experience. And the second part that art therapists know very well, which is the externalization of lived experience through making. Art therapists are often heard to say, art therapy gives voice to that which does not have words. So we have a great belief and an expertise in helping people communicate very complex experiences through the material, and the meaning that's collectively made out of that experience is, I think, a lot of where the nexus of the therapy happens. And we get to do all of that in a beautiful, wonderful, supportive environment of a fine art museum, which I think we're very fortunate to do.
Yes, we are. Mm.
So both of you agree on this notion of, you know, hyper empathy, I would say a higher density, I mean, in terms of existence that you get the person to touch. Could you explain us what type of technique you're using in order for those people to get to this notion of catharsis that Sophie was mentioning? What type of artistic techniques that are used for which audience?
I think it really varies from the group that we have. I mean, for me, in the National Museum of Fine Arts here in Quebec, so I'm really into like co-creating, I mean, experiences or like programs for the community. So for example, so I thought about like two different examples to show you like the variety of like mediums that we can use. So in January 2021, I've developed an initiative called How Are You? And so it's where we went in the community in various organizations to really like contemplate a piece of art that we took out of our collection. And then we created something out of it. So that's an exact example of what I was explaining earlier about going in the community if they can't come to us. So we were then able to reach out people who had like really strong mental health issues, especially through because of the pandemic, addiction, and also even prostitution. So we also worked with sex workers, which are really like a super wonderful experience. And then those participants were able to use the medium of engraving. So they did an art piece answering the question, how are you? After contemplating, observing an art piece of our collection. So the prints were after that exposed to the public after during like an 8 months exhibition. So you can really just imagine like the boost of self-esteem and also like self-worth these people had when they saw the art piece in a museum. So, and they thought that they didn't have like any artistic skills. So that's a thing that we do. Another thing is also another initiative. It's called Tahatuetik, which is an initiative with with youth in the north. So up north in Nunavik, here in northern Quebec. So the youth were really invited to rethink works from our permanent collection by expressing really their personal issues. So they chose to really express themselves related to the climate crisis. So creation was really presented to them as a tool for expression, transformation, really encourage them to contact commitment and also inclusion, I guess, in their community. So again, here the main objective was really the empowerment of individual, and it is a piece of art that really of our collection that really was the starter of using art as therapy. And so I'm speaking, but I do have pictures of that, so images that I can show you. Yeah. So I'll just share my screen right now. So I'll show you some pictures of so how are you? So this was the initiative with like, so as you can see, so here you have so like the three pieces of art of our collection exposed, and on the left, so you have like the prints of the participants, so responding to the question, how are you? And so those prints were exposed in our museum, and the visitors were also able to answer the question, how are you? So it's an odd question to ask in a fine art museum, but I guess that it is really important to sensibilize also the visitors that they can have feelings here in a really caring museum setting. And so we really invited them to just take a moment and just be in touch about how they are feeling right now and really responding with a color. And so those are photographs of, so you saw engraving, prints, and this is photos of so the youth in Nunavik who really chose, so underneath you have the art piece of our collection that they chose to be inspired to recreate a picture of their own expressing the climate crisis, so expressing how they were feeling. So the exhibition that they want to have with those pictures created, it's called Tema, which is in Inuktitut, and it means stop. So stop. We need to stop this disaster, this climate crisis. So you have other bunch of examples. On the left, it's the picture of our and the art piece of our collection, and on the right, you have a snowmobile dump, I guess. It's a drone photo, and another here picture. And we also have various other kind of initiatives. So here you have a mindfulness workshop that is happening at the museum. So we also have other means of expression for people to really experience the link between art and wellness. Excellent. I could go on and on and on, but I think that I'll give the speech to Steve.
Excellent. What we can see.
Bless you.
What we can see is that so we have this notion of through the eyes having a notion of caring.
Yeah.
And we have also, I would say, the museum transforming itself into almost a holy sacred place for people to feel good, and immediately this notion of how are you when we enter the museum, to really put mental health, I would say, at the heart, as you were saying, putting people in the center of the museum. Thank you very much for explaining us this very beautiful process. Stefan, could you tell us a little bit about the techniques you're using?
Sure. I'll start with just this question around material, how different materials find their way into our projects, into our groups, and the considerations that we make as art therapists that might be a little bit different than, say, an artist, a social artist, or an art educator. And art therapists tend to view materials along a kind of continuum of affect and the different ways that materials can bring something out of someone. And if you think about a collage, for instance, versus a spontaneous painting, these are two different, very different activities that bring out different parts of a person. And without using the word prescription, we can use recommendations of the materials in such a way that we hope will have a therapeutic response with the person. Collage tends to be a very cognitive activity. Painting is something that tends to come and get our emotions. Something like a fine pencil might give you a little bit more of a calming perspective. Materials are our colleagues, and we use them in very open ways, an open approach where we have a confidence that the participant is just going to choose what they need, or we can use them in a very directive fashion as well and say, this atelier today, this studio experience is going to be about exploration of clay. And I understand the implications and the qualities of clay, and that it's going to be used physically, it's going to be manipulated, and I'm going to have and hope that the group will connect with those qualities for that therapeutic experience. And so that's sort of a different range of the ways that we use materials. The way that we make connections with those materials back to the collections, we are in a fine art museum, can often be a fascinating journey as well. And so we use themes a lot in the ways that we design in my case, the way that we design on our therapy group. And each week that theme will be explored at the rhythm that the group decides. So we hand over a lot of autonomy, a lot of empowerment to the group to be able to make those decisions about what they like, what they don't like, and what they want. But you can have, and both of us, both Sophie and I, are blessed with these beautiful, huge collections to work with, and to work with materials across its own continuum. So if we're going to go see the visual arts, if we're going to see, paintings from the Romantic period, if we're going to see sculpture, if we're going to see design, all of that can help to elicit different kinds of responses in the people that we're working with. And so if you take a theme, let's say the theme of body image, so the theme of body image can be explored in something as immediate as classical sculpture, but it can be also explored in much more nuanced ways through different forms of portraiture. And so we'll take those themes that we've I like to think of going into the galleries as a gathering. We gather people together, but we're also gathering their reflections, and we bring all of that kind of psychological material back to the studio and start reworking it through the interactions with les arts plastiques, with the physical materials. So those are some of the techniques that we use. Each group and each session gets its own consideration, because people are coming in with different needs. So if we're working with we're actually in the month of autism, so let's talk about neurodiversity. We have some different programs with different collaborators. We've been working for a long time with young adults who are diagnosed on the spectrum, and they will have the best possible experience if we've gone through not only our own training experiences, but given careful consideration to their motivations for being there. So the way that we will design a theme and the way that we'll design a visit, giving consideration to sensory impact. Maybe we'll go explore galleries that aren't as frequented on a given day. Just being careful about the participant experience so that their opportunity to express themselves can be maximized. Those are I would describe that as a technique. And then finally, I would also say that when we're working in partnership, and sometimes working in partnership with other clinicians, with other psychologists or psychoeducators, speech therapists, doctors, psychiatrists, all of these professionals have expressed or participated in the museum in a way that brings important external credibility to what we do, brings important credibility to saying, that the arts are very much alive and well in mental health, and a unique vehicle for reclaiming and building mental health. But taking into careful consideration their expertise with the participants that they're working with their patients, with their clients. And so that is another technique of collaboration that I feel is really important, and one that we've been able to help grow our projects from, by really listening carefully to how they know a specific public.
So the museum becomes the new hospital in a way.
I like to say hospital or like spas, like when you have like a really good experience, like you want to have like a good day, like you feel like you need to really like just take care of yourself, have a self-care moment. Yeah, so why just go into a museum and just like go and like contemplate one piece of art, or just like use one art medium, for example. But I really love what Stephen did, and I strongly agree also. And I think that the main idea here for me is like the visitors have to have a good experience in the museum setting, so that the museum can really become this caring setting. And it's really important to listen to their needs, to like really co-create an initiative. Stephen, would you agree? You agree?
I completely agree. And while I do love the idea of actually I really love the idea of hospitals starting to look like museums. Um,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
as
What?
and some museums have been very effective in the way that they have used reproductions in hospital settings to help transform our medical milieus into spaces that uh, have more art encounter opportunities. So the way that we adorn our hospitals, the way that I think that fine art museums have an important role to play in exporting those collections as well. But the
Always.
museum, I'd like to think is maybe starting to become one of the best friends of the hospital. There's and something else worth touching upon is the museum is also transformed by this participation. So we have this, Sophie and I have this great privilege of doing this work, of being trained as mental health professionals. And here we get to work in a fine art museum. But the other thing that we get to observe is how is a museum transformed by that participation, by its patients, by its clients, by its participants, however we want to call them. They are coming and changing the way that we work, and they're changing the way that a museum can be regarded. Ultimately, they're the ones that get to say, this environment has helped my health. They're the ones that bring I think the greatest validity to that work.
So you mentioned the word prescription, and I think
Yeah.
it's important for you to talk about this very bizarre, shall we say,
Sure.
medical prescription to go to museum that you initiated. I mean, tell us more about it, please.
Sure. And let me put it into a little bit of context. I'll just take a minute to do so. There have been really good, what are called social prescribing schemes, mechanisms, and initiatives that have happened in different parts of the world. The UK is particularly renowned for them, but there are other examples as well. And in broad strokes, social prescribing attempts to give healthcare professionals more options to respond to the social dimension of people's illness. And so when you have people who are coming, and this has been reported on, when you have people that are coming to their doctor's office and they are evaluating what's wrong with their patient, they're finding an increasing amount of problems related to social isolation, to loneliness, and to being even isolated within a diagnosis as well. So social prescribing was conceived to help that patient connect with meaningful group activity that could happen outside of the doctor's office, because the doctor is always going to be limited in what they can do. So think about the number of different ways that activities might be able to be helpful to somebody who is suffering or who is alone. Everything from gardening to dancing to a social group to volunteering. And in all of that, some very smart people started to see museums as a place where people might enjoy a social activity as well. And we have the conception of a museum prescription. Now, we had the opportunity to do something a little bit unique. I'll share my screen there so you can see it. At our museum, in that we have a prescription that's specifically for our museum. And it's actually undergoing a very timely research evaluation at this moment. So we're going to hopefully have some good data on what is the efficacy of doctors being able to prescribe a museum visit to their patient, which can also include going with somebody they're close to, perhaps their partner or a close friend, and they can also go with their family, because the patient might actually be the child. This is something that we don't always immediately imagine, like, oh, that's right, this can be a patient of any age. So this particular prescription is trying to give at once new tools to doctors who are themselves thinking outside the box, but looking to expand how it is that they support their patients. And connecting with a cultural milieu, I think, is an excellent first step. My hope for this particular prescription is that, and pardon the expression, I hope it becomes viral. I hope that it's something that many institutions recognize as being an important tool for connecting people, perhaps people who themselves wouldn't think to use the museum as a destination for wellness. and that it becomes widespread across our province and across our country. We're seeing also in different parts of Canada, for instance, that nature prescriptions have become more than a novelty, that they're being used. And you can imagine a province like British Columbia that has such an incredible splendor of natural resource available to it. The prescription gives the patient access to a national park. So these are very old ideas. These are very old ways of healing. We're just remembering how to do them again and giving them a renewed context and very contemporary tools to support people with them.
We understand that, of course, both of you think that art could be an efficient tool to help a flourishing mental health. What would be the message you would like the world to hear on this International World Day?
This is a big question. Wow. Stephen.
Well, off the top of my head, I would say on this International World Day of Art, if we think of ourselves wholly, holistically, we are in essence creative beings. We are made to create, and we are made to connect. And if we take those two components that each of us has and put them together, we hopefully will continue, because I don't think this is a new idea. We will hopefully continue to recognize the connections through the arts and connections to ourselves through the arts are an essential and integrative approach to maintaining our mental health and well-being and our communities.
I think that I will, thank you to break the ice. Yeah, no, I think that I will extend saying that don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of like doing art. Don't be afraid to go to museums. You don't have to be a talented artist to create a wonderful piece of art. And I think that art can be also everywhere. So yes, we have the privilege of working in a museum setting. But I feel like art can also be like in the beauty of things, like, or in architecture, in a landscape, for example. So this also can be like kind of like pieces of art. So just like open your eyes and just like be open to really feel the powerful intensity that art can have on you. It can really do wonderful things. Yeah.
Thank you to both to helping us better understand not only the impact that art can have on us, but also the willingness we need to become ourselves creator and to become ourselves artist of our own life. Thank you again and wishing you well.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.